video, I want us to talk about Suxmethonium. Suxmethonium. By an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. Hello guys, hello family, hello friends. In this video, I want us to talk about Suxmethonium. Suxmethonium. What I'm gonna share with you guys, for students, this is gonna be enough for you to get really good marks on those questions that they'll be asking you about Suxmethonium. I'll try and cover all the important things. So Suxmethonium, as we all know that, please, if you have not watched my 2 other videos where I talk about neuromuscular blockers, please go and check that, because that's where I introduce neuromuscular blockers and explain how exactly do they work, and what is this thing of depolarizing and non-depolarizing, what is actually that, and which drugs are regarded as depolarizing and which ones are regarded as non-depolarizing neuromuscular blockers. So Suxmethonium is the only depolarizing neuromuscular blocker. It's the only one. I want us to sort of like compare Suxmethonium and acetylcholine. So I would put acetylcholine this side, and I'll put Sux this side. Obviously, as we all know, the other name for Sux is scopolamine. So when it comes to the structure of these 2 molecules, Suxmethonium has got 2 acetylcholine molecules in it. Structurally, the structure of Suxmethonium is very similar to that of acetylcholine, and we know that acetylcholine is natural, is in the body, we have it, but we don't have Sux. That's why we give it. So acetylcholine, we know that it's released. Please go and watch that video where I talk about when is it released and how is it released in response to a nerve impulse transmission and that type of a thing. Calcium channels opening, the vesicles being exocytosed, and then they get into the synaptic cleft and that type of a thing. Acetylcholine has got 1 molecule in its structure. 1 molecule, right? These two structures, both of them, they sit on the active site of nicotinic receptors. they sit on the active site. So if they sit on the active site, it means that they are able to, so they are agonist. They are not antagonist. Whatever that sit does not, whatever molecule that does not sit on the active site on a receptor is just an agonist, is an antagonist. So whatever that sit on the active site and cause effect, it's an agonist. Whatever that sit on the receptor but not on the active site is an antagonist. So these two drugs, they come in, they sit on this on the same site on the nicotinic receptors. Now the site where they sit, I want you to understand this, guys. So I'm gonna draw a receptor, but it's just for explanation purposes. The receptor, let's say it's something like this, the nicotinic receptor, and this is an active site and this is an active site. Now on this receptor, for this receptor to be stimulated, there must be a molecule here and then there must be a molecule here. If it happens that only one molecule actually sits on the receptor, like this receptor will not be stimulated. So this means that when acetylcholine actually wants to go and exert effects, one molecule will come in and sit there, and then that receptor will wait for a second acetylcholine molecule to come and sit again, and then the receptor is stimulated. Right? The advantage that Sux has is that when it comes with two molecules already. It comes, this is molecule 1, this is molecule 2, and those two molecules are linked together by a methyl group. A methyl group. A methyl group, if I remember my organic chemistry well, it's CH3. So when it comes, it just comes and sits like that. I mean, this gives the drug already an advantage. Okay. Now, normally, this is the normal side. Acetylcholine will go and sit there, cause effect, and the effects are very brief because this acetylcholine molecule is metabolized, or let's say it's broken down, is broken down by an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase. This enzyme is found, it's present, it's abundant in the synaptic cleft, or in that gap, this enzyme. And this enzyme, it prevents acetylcholine from sitting for a long time on a receptor. It breaks it down very quickly. That's why the effects of acetylcholine are very brief. They are very, very brief. They are not prolonged. So this enzyme breaks down acetylcholine into choline and acetic acid. acid. Right? So pay attention to the fact that the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine is found in the synaptic cleft or in the gap junction. It's abundant, it's there, it's found there. And pay attention to the fact that that enzyme, once it breaks down acetylcholine, that molecule cannot exert effects anymore because its metabolites are not active metabolites, right? So you can't have an issue of an increased potassium with acetylcholine because the acetylcholine molecule doesn't sit for a long time. Remember, the longer you sit on the receptor, the more you stimulate it and the more potassium will be pumped outside, because you are allowing this. Please go and watch that video where I explain this, guys. So the longer acetylcholine, or let's say the longer that nicotinic receptor is stimulated, the more potassium will be pumped outside and the more sodium will come in. And the longer you pump potassium outside to the outside of the cell, that's when you're going to create hyperkalemia. But it doesn't happen with acetylcholine because when a receptor has sat long enough to exert effects, it's broken down. It's broken down. It's broken down. Sits broken down. Sits exert effects and broken down. Sits and broken down. So that's why you cannot have that problem of hyperkalemia with acetylcholine. Now let's look at Sux. So Suxmethonium, so it comes in and sits there and stimulate, just like stimulate the receptor, just like acetylcholine. Now the problem is that this molecule, the Sux molecule, is not broken down in the synaptic cleft. Because the enzyme that breaks it, which is called plasma pseudocholinesterase, is not found in that synaptic cleft. It's in the plasma, as it says, plasma pseudocholinesterase. So this allows the Sux molecule to sit for longer on the receptor and have prolonged effects. So Suxmethonium sits on the receptor, and when he thinks that I'm done now, that's when he starts to move away from the receptor. But by that time, it has already caused a lot of hyperkalemia. Because like I said, the longer the nicotinic receptor is stimulated, the more depolarization is going to happen, the more sodium will enter the cell. Let me explain this thing again, guys. I don't want to lose you. You have a cell like this. Let's say you have you've got an end bulb. This is our neuron, and you've got a motor end plate like that, and this is the sarcolemma, which is the plasma membrane of the muscle. So those receptors are here. Now, once these receptors are activated, these receptors these nicotinic receptors can either be stimulated by acetylcholine or anything that is similar to acetylcholine, which is suxmethonium. So when they are stimulated, sodium channels open and an influx of sodium enters the cell. Now you have a situation whereby, remember, naturally the inside of the cell is more negative than the outside. So now once you start pumping in a lot of sodium into the cell, you are making this cell to be more positive, and that's what is called depolarization. And because the body wants to maintain homeostasis, the body will try and take out positive cations. Let me just say cations. It's going to try and pump out positive ions, which are cations, to the outside of the cell to try and maintain neutrality, or try and bring this back to normal. So the ion, or the cation that takes the jab, is potassium. So the more sodium comes in because of these receptors being stimulated, the more potassium will leave out. This is how you create that state of hyperkalemia. So I want you guys to really understand this. The longer suxmethonium sits on the receptor, causes receptors to open, causes the opening of sodium channels and the release of potassium. So the longer Sux sits there, the longer you are gonna continue to have or to eject these potassium ions. So, and the issue is that suxmethonium is not broken down in the synaptic cleft. For it to be broken down by this plasma pseudocholinesterase, it has got to actually negotiate with itself and starts to move away from the, by a process of diffusion, starts to move away now from the synaptic junction and be broken down by the plasma cholinesterase. I hope you guys you get that. So for the students, the important things here is that understand this comparison, understand that there is one molecule here, there is two molecules here. Understand that suxmethonium is a depolarizing. I've just explained that, how it causes that depolarization. And understand that the receptors that these two use, same receptors. And understand that the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine is acetylcholinesterase, and it's found in the synaptic cleft. And the metabolites of acetylcholine is choline and acetic acid, which are inactive. They're not active metabolites. And also on this side, understand that Sux sits on the same receptors, but the enzyme that breaks suxmethonium down is plasma. Understand that suxmethonium is made up of two molecules of acetylcholine and broken down by plasma pseudocholinesterase, and it diffuses. When it's done stimulating the receptor, it diffuses away from the receptor, and that's when now it gets a chance to be broken down. Otherwise, there's no one who comes to Sux and say, move away from the receptor. It's gonna sit there and enjoy itself and then starts to move. And that's suxmethonium. So let's meet another video where we talk about the side effects, the indications, and that type of a thing. Thank you.